faults are thousands of feet below the ground, so you're not going to drill something that deep economically to fix your home. So people.
How often does the fall affect the foundation of the home? Not very often, though, does it?
If you buy or sell homes along the Long Point Fault, it's called, which runs along Long Point, strangely enough, it's the same name. There are homes that are unsellable west of downtown, sort of where Beltway and I-10 are. And some of
Are you talking about Long Point Street here in Spring Branch? That's where the fault is?
I can drive you to places where the streets dip a couple of feet down, and that's from past fault movement, and sometimes it goes right through a home.
Okay, next time I drive through Long Point, I'm going to look.
Not every home, there's a fault. Yeah, you could. It's very famous. We used to take people around, it's not a happy subject, to see where it breached. You can see the garage door, and then it pinches off because it's not level anymore. And at least once a month we get a phone call, please come out and take a look. My realtor says there may be the Long Point Fault in the area. That's the most notorious of our faults. But like I said, there's 250 of them plus in the area.
Well, I was looking at a house once over near that area in Spring Branch, but it didn't have that problem. The problem they had was the middle of the house was always wet. It just won't drain. Like it's the wood floor buckle up, whatever they put was always wet. And it's a house I wouldn't want to touch because I don't know how I'm going to fix that problem.
So the water came into the home?
It must have come in from somewhere, but the middle of the house was buckling up. Like it was higher. It was weird, but it was always wet. And you can tell because the floor was new and they told us that they had to change the floor all the time.
We had a home, and I'll pass this on, although it's the same example you got. I don't remember what they were doing, but for some reason they had to dig onto the foundation for whatever reason. And as soon as they dug the hole, it was full of water and it hadn't rained. Wherever they dug next to the home, there was water under the home. And they were like, we're checking our water meter. We don't have a leak. Long story short, it turned out to be their swimming pool on a separate line had a leak. I finally asked after about 2 or 3 hours, and he said, yeah, we thought we fixed that, but yeah, the meter's always moving for the water. So the swimming pool had some sort of leak, not from the swimming pool, but the line that does the chlorination in there. And so that was
the neighbor's swimming pool?
No, it was their swimming pool.
Oh.
We were so focused on something being under the house, but half these problems is trying to find the source, like we talked about with mold. And in this one, I should have been more attuned to looking at the swimming pool. But we were measuring the water and looking at her water notes. Water and its accumulation is a big problem. We usually have 1 or 2 studies a year where we're having to figure out where water is coming from that's causing mold, subsidence, damage. And it's not fun because water travels in different obtuse kind of directions and is controlled by natural and man-made things. And it's interesting, once you find it, you feel good, but in the process, you wake up, as I told Shannon, at 2 o'clock in the morning, where my brain has been thinking about it all night. I wake up and go, swimming pool,
You got a lot of water there in that pool.
A quick little story about water. So the sidewalk in front of this person's house was constantly settling. So we redid the sidewalk, filled it back in, and it settled again. So it turned out, long story short, is he had a roof drain, and the roof drain, he claimed, it was a flat roof home, drained the whole roof, it was supposed to go underground and attached to a storm sewer line. Well, when we opened it up, it wasn't attached to the storm sewer. So it was constantly flooding in that area between the home and the sidewalk. And so he was trying to fix the problem, and he was wasting money constantly because it was washing out and again. Yeah.
So we're just putting on a Band-Aid instead of fixing the real problem.
You have to find the source. You got to find
right.
mold or chemical leak or all the strange things that can happen to you. If you don't fix the source, which is hard. It's like a doctor diagnosing a problem. You take an aspirin because you have a headache every day, and sometimes you have to maybe ask why, what's causing this headache.
Yeah. One extra glass of wine could do that.
With sulfites.
Okay, so we talked a little bit before we hit the record button. And when you said flooding, it reminded me of this because, we go and look at property with septic. And one of the things that we look at when they say they have a septic is it wet around the septic area? And if it is, there may be issue with the septic. But from your professional eyes, you see a whole different set of problem than what I see. What I see is how much is it going to cost me to replace the septic? But what you see is something else.
Yeah, well, it's similar. About once a year, we have a septic problem because most of the things we do are in urban environments. People tend to do things a little differently out in the suburbs, way out when you deal with septic. So we've had cases. I remember one up in Tomball where they were going to buy a home, and what was holding up the sale is the gentleman had a workshop, and they were worried about his hobby type activities, his mineral spirits, his paints, going into the septic field. And like you said, it's wet, and the people buying it were very sensitive to chemical problems, financially sensitive. So we had to go and test the area. And that happens like about once a year where a knowledgeable buyer is buying a home, a single family home, and they do the phase one, which I said is unusual with homes, and they find a septic field and start asking questions. Have you only been putting down what's supposed to be down? They had a gentleman who was running a carousel, which this is really weird. He kind of ran out of his home a carousel painting business. And you could tell right away with the phase one that there were not hobby horses, but those horses in the carousel, and he was painting them. But he had just a normal residential septic system, so it had to be cleaned up from a chemical perspective. And then there is all sorts of regulations about the septic water is not supposed to come out so it's being poorly drained or overused or clogged. So once it comes out, it's a health problem. I've seen where there was, not to be gross, but toilet paper or things that shouldn't be on the surface of a septic field. And they were there, and it's unsanitary. And in this one case, the neighbor called and complained to a city entity, and they were written up, and they had to show proof that they had dug up the septic field, re-engineered it so it was appropriate, tried to find out if there was a problem with the actual solids tank, and it was fixed up. Single family home, who would have expected that? In the country.
Every now and then we run into septic here in the city. There's some older neighborhood that still have septic, and most of them are on city waters, so it's fine. But whenever they have a small lot and they got septic and well, that's when we a little worry. This episode is brought to you by National Real Estate Insurance Group, a national independent insurance agency specifically for real estate investors. I personally use NREIG for my investment properties. They offer a low monthly payment option to help you to lower your cash out of pocket when buying an investment property. If you're looking for insurance coverage for your flips or your rental, reach out to them. You can click on the link in the show descriptions, or you can reach out to Jules at 816-946-8443.